Happy Monday. It's Nutball Cop again. This one I'm going to call I'm growingly disappointed in the fact that American civics, American politics, and American history, um, Americans know less and less about those three things as time moves forward, and it's causing a problem. Let's take this meme I've seen in various forms. I've seen this a half a dozen times over past week or so. And it says Congress split the Dakota Territory in half in 1889 and admitted two new states with four Republican senators. So spare us the fake outrage over DC statehood. This is so unbelievably reductive and dumb. It needs to be addressed. Okay. For those lacking any basic civics reading and you didn't watch Schoolhouse Rock or you didn't attend social studies in the eighth grade, let me bring you up to speed really quick. Under the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, it's also called the District Clause, Congress is granted authority over, and let me read you the exact text. The Article 1 is establishing Congress. Section 8 of Article 1 enumerates the powers of Congress. Clause 17 is the Enclave Clause, or the District Clause, as it's called. Clause 17, Section 8, Article 1. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over the district not exceeding 10 square miles, as may, by cession of particular states and the exception of Congress, become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislator of the state, in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. Okay. Um, Washington, D.C. is a federal city and it is a legal and a constitutional construct. Okay. Let's get that out of the way first. Okay. The lack of history and the lack of political knowledge here boils down to there was a reason why we created the federal city and why Maryland and Virginia ceded 10 square miles total to meet the needs of Clause 17, because we had basically an attack by soldiers in 1783 against the old capital, the old national capital in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Um, there was a great fear among several of the founding fathers that a state could literally take the seat of federal government under control. So they wanted to create a federal city accountable to Congress, not a state government. Okay? They literally went through the constitutional mechanisms purposely to not create a state, but to create a federal city. Okay? I think some of the confusion, because people think residency means sovereignty, and it does not. Military bases have residents, have people living there. They're not states. Federal territory have residents. They're not states. Embassy has residents, and they're territories of the United States, but they're not a state. Okay. And I know that you're trying to give more representation to the people who live in the federal city, but you simply have, obviously, you're unaware of the hurdles that would be required to change it from a federal city to a state. You would not need one congressional amendment ratified by 2/3 of the states. You would need two, one to change the enclave/district clause, and then one to reapportion the electoral votes that the federal city now gets. So you'd have two gigantic, massive hurdles, which, in my opinion, you could never overcome. Okay, so this is just wish posting, wish meming. Okay. Under our framework and under our constitutional system, the federal city must remain neutral. That has been decided time and time again in the Supreme Court. Um, the other hurdle at the state level you would have to overcome is to get Maryland to agree, because most of the 10 square miles was actually Maryland's territory, or Maryland's within Maryland's state boundary. You'd have to convince Maryland to use that um, given land for a purpose not for what they chartered the land to be. So that's going to be another big problem. Now, what amazes me is if this meme is clamoring for more representation on the Democratic side, which I don't necessarily think fixes our problem. I think more independent representation would solve more of our problems. You have the mechanism not to get one state, but you have the mechanism. Oh, let me back up a step. Okay, if you wanted to actually change the federal city, you got to go through 2 constitutional amendments requiring 2/3 ratification. You're looking at up to 7 years for both. And you could literally put up where they stack them, where it would take, a good portion of 2 cycles of 7 years is it 7 or 10 years? But it's long. Okay, it's not going to be done overnight. Okay, and most of the states are not going to agree to go changing the federal city. Now, unbeknown to many of the people, especially the ones on the leaning left, leaning Democrat side who put up this uninformed meme, is you could have 5 states by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, but you would still have no guarantees they'd be represented by Democrats. Okay. To make Washington, D.C. the federal city a state would require years upon years, legal battle after legal battle, yada, 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 yada. You don't get a state out of D.C., even if you really wanted one, for at minimum 5 years. Tomorrow morning by 10 a.m., you could have 5 new states if you wanted. There's nothing legally blocking it. That would be the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, the Marianas Islands, and I get that list right? Yeah, it's Puerto Rico, Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, Mariana Islands. I feel like I'm missing somebody, but we'll get back to that. These are already accepted territories in the Union. To make them states, to make Guam a state or make Puerto Rico a state, is a very simple process. Okay? And they're literally all teed up to become states if they chose to become states. That could happen a lot quicker than the changing the Constitution, because you would not need a constitutional change to get the Marianas Islands or the Virgin Islands to be part of America as a state. Okay. There are already territories. They're governed under the territory clause. Making them a state is already a known process. We know this from this meme. You can take a territory and you can make a state. You can split it up and make it 2 states. But here's the falsehood of DC. How do you know how DC is going to fall when you make it a state, even though you can't? If you take all the territories and decide, oh, all the territories are going to get statehood. Yeah, it's Guam, Marshall Islands, Virgin Islands, Marianas Islands, and Puerto Rico. All 5, you're going to change the states tomorrow morning. What guarantee do you have they're all going to be AOC and Bernie Sanders supporters? And a bigger question I have is, where the hell are you getting that? Okay. Puerto Rico, from my readings, is not a solid blue state. It has a strong conservative base. It's very religious. Religion ties to conservatism. You would probably end up, from my reading, you'd probably end up with a split Senate delegation from Puerto Rico. Guam and the Mariana Islands, strong military presence, strong active duty bases, veteran heavy locations. They're both socially conservative in a lot of aspects. There's no guarantee that Guam or Mariana Islands would go to the Democrats. Virgin Islands, complete toss-up. And what guarantee over time do you have that even if every one of these states in the next election went quote unquote blue, we've had states left and right and center all flip their positions over time. Okay. So many states have flipped from where they started. So if you wanted statehood for anybody, the easy path is the 5 territories. The hardest path possible that has the lowest chance of becoming successful, that's the federal city, Washington, D.C. Okay, but then once you make these places states and you assign them representation, you got to let the cards fall where they may. And you just presuming that either the federal city or any of the 5 territories would automatically be, a Bernie bro center of power, that's reductive. That's kind of facile. That's not a really good understanding about the expansion of powers in Congress. And I think what they're trying to do here is put the cart before the horse. They want the expansion first, then they want to figure out if they can actually win doing it. And that's just bad political strategy. Okay. When you put up memes like this, I wrote an essay a little while back that was telling you, be really careful with the reductive memes. I'll relink this when I post this post this in the video feed. I'll repost that essay. But these are the type of memes that do not help. Okay? Because obviously you've never looked at or studied or read anything about the Constitution, political history, history itself, the founding fathers, whatever. That's all a magical mystery grab bag to you. Okay? Just because you want the federal city to be Democrat doesn't mean that the federal city is going to be Democrat. Just because you want it to be a state doesn't mean it's going to fall to your side. And the hurdles that you face getting DC into a state is, I would say, 90 to 95% unsurmountable. You have a complete glide path to get the 5 territories in. Again, tomorrow morning, that could be done. So if anybody can clue me in why you're so enamored with Washington, D.C., even though you would never make it through the 2 constitutional changes required, why do you think this is the best solution? And why is this a repetitive, even though it's reductive, it's a repetitive meme? If anybody can answer that in the comments for me, I'd be greatly appreciative. So, reductive, I give this meme a D-. It doesn't take into account the facts, the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, the soldier riot in Philadelphia in 1783, and it doesn't really account into the political space we're actually playing in today. So please don't listen to memes like this, and if you see them, unpack them and realize how reductive and off base they are. Okay, until next time, please think about it.